It's time for the Double Stop with Brian Sword. Welcome to the Double Stop podcast. I'm Brian Sword. This week on the show, we've got John Corabi, who famously replaced Vince Neil in Mötley Crüe. And famously, Mötley Crüe had a lot of backlash for it. But a funny thing happened. As years went on, that album became more and more popular. And now amongst the fans looking back at it, it's somewhat of a cult classic. He went on to form Union, and a similar thing happened. Although there was no backlash, it's still a band that is much more appreciated now than it was then. I really wanted to talk to John about that, and what it's like to have a career where the music you create may not be as appreciated when it comes out, but finds an audience a few years later. This episode is the story of John Corabi, who's always one step ahead, even if he might seem 2 steps behind.
Born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and honestly, I'm the first musical person in my family, other than my mom listening to her incredibly large and eclectic record collection. I'm the first person that actually picked up an instrument and played it. But music, like I was saying before, has just always been kind of. It was always in my house. My mom was always listening to music from the minute she got up to the minute she went to bed. So
yeah, you soaked that in like a sponge. What were some of the artists that really connected with you?
Like I said, she was super eclectic, but I mean, she used to listen to everything from Frank Sinatra to, country music and guys like Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, Glenn Campbell. But she also listened to a lot of kind of British pop stuff, like the Raspberries, the Hollies, the Beatles, the Stones. I mean, it was crazy. And then, she passed away in 1996, but I mean, even at that point, she still had everything from Frank Sinatra to Led Zeppelin. You know what I mean? She just loved music. She was, really eclectic in her taste. So there was a few that stood out, but for me, I think it was between her record collection and then just seeing the Beatles on TV when I was younger. Just really motivated me to want to kind of do music or be involved in it to some degree.
I'm sorry to hear that she passed, but that would have been after you were in Motley, so that must have been pretty exciting for her.
It was right before they let me go. My mom had passed away it was actually 96, and then I kind of wound up leaving the band. They brought Vince back probably about 8 months later, seven or 8 months later, something like that.
That's a double whammy.
Yeah, that was a weird year.
Let's jump back to some happier times of your childhood. What was your first instrument?
Guitar. My parents bought me for Christmas. They bought me. It was an acoustic guitar, and it was a company, obviously Sears and Roebuck, but Sears they had a line of guitars made for them. It was called a Silvertone. So I had an old Sears Silvertone acoustic guitar they bought me for Christmas, and I tortured them for a few months, and then they decided to get me some lessons. So.
And did singing start early as well, or is that something that came later?
No, I mean, I would kind of sing along, or try to.
Yeah.
I just remember standing in front of a mirror in my house, just strumming on the guitar, not even really barring any chords or anything like that. I would just sit there and strum and sing like Elvis Presley songs and Johnny B. Good and then try to do Beatles tunes, but I wasn't even playing any chords, so it was it was actually quite funny. That's why I said I tortured them for a while. But they finally broke down. They're like, we got to get him lessons because this is the biggest mistake we've ever made. So.
And how did you take right to the lessons?
Yes and no. I mean, I wanted to play guitar, and I kind of did lose interest in it because at the time I was going to a Catholic school in Philadelphia. So I was taking lessons through the school, and it required me going to the nuns. They had a convent, and I would go to the convent, and they would sit there with a piano, and they would teach me all this boring shit like Michael, Row Your Boat Ashore and Kumbaya and all these gospel songs. And I'm just like, this blows. I don't want to do this. I took a few lessons there, and I just kind of lost interest because it just was torture. And then probably about 6 months, 7 months, a year later, whatever it was, a neighbor of mine, she started taking lessons somewhere else, and she was playing all these cool songs like, Beatles and Simon and Garfunkel and just all this cool shit. And I'm like, wow, like how did you get so good? And and basically I went to this store in Philadelphia. It was called Zaff's Music Store. And I took lessons from a guy named Jim Newitt, and he basically undid everything that the nuns taught me and then figured out a way to capture my attention again by teaching me how to read and teaching me some music theory, but doing it in a manner where it was like through Beatles songs or Simon and Garfunkel or some of the stuff that was on the radio. So he made it interesting, but it was cool. Like I wanted to learn at that point because I was learning things that I could relate to, songs I could relate to. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that makes all the difference in the world, eh?
Yeah.
So tell me about your first bands then.
First band was, I can't even remember the name of the thing, but the first band that I was ever in, I think I was in maybe second or third grade, fourth grade, something like that. And I joined a talent show at that school that I was going to. And we played 2 songs in the talent show. We played I'm Not Your Stepping Stone by the Monkees. And we did House of the Rising Sun by the Animals. And we actually wound up winning, so it was pretty cool. Just that whole feeling of having people clap for you and make a fuss over you afterwards, I kind of became a little addicted to it, so it was pretty cool.
Were you a shy kid where that was an awakening, or were you already the class clown and just looking for more?
No, I was kind of middle of the road. I mean, I wasn't afraid to talk to people. I mean, even still to this day, now my wife, but she laughs. She goes, man, I can take you could literally start a conversation with anybody. So I've always kind of been that kid, but, there was just I don't know how to explain it, man. It's just a very weird feeling to stand on a stage and capture, whether it's 10 people or 10,000 people. It's like you get some sort of little, some juice from it. So I was, very addicted to that early on.
And did you follow through into some more bands after that talent show? Yep.
Went on to, it was hit or miss, trying to put the killer band together. And obviously I did like what a lot of musicians do. They started out with the, club circuit, not the club circuit, but started out doing covers and playing like, keg parties and playing, VFW places and just all these random little, block parties or whatever. But I just basically started out doing covers and then basically after that, I was probably about 17 or 18 years old and I started getting into the whole cover scene in, the New Jersey, Philadelphia, New Jersey, Delaware area.
And was that singing or just playing guitar?
Started out playing guitar and eventually got into the singing thing. and I was like a guitar player, frontman. I did that for a little while, and then there was a band that came to see one of the bands that I was in, and they actually convinced me to be a frontman, which was a little difficult. There was a little bit of a transition period because I wasn't used to singing and not having something in my hand, so I had to figure out how to be a frontman and use the microphone stand and connect to the audience and all that shit without having that guard of a guitar in between me and them. You know what I mean? But I basically started as a guitar player, and like I said, I just morphed into being a singer.
What would be the value then of not playing guitar and singing?
Well, I think, it's weird. I think some people, for me personally, I think the way my brain is wired, I think that if I just play guitar, I'm a really good guitar player. If I'm just singing, I'm a really good singer. But if I do both at the same time, it kind of takes away from each a little bit, because you're there's a whole left brain, right brain thing that you're like, okay, I got to play this riff. It's a very odd timed riff, and then you got to sing, and then you got to watch your pitch. So you're kind of focusing on a lot of different things instead of just diving into one thing. I can do it. I've been doing it for the last, 10 or 15 years, or longer. But I think when I can put a guitar down and just front a band, my vocals are better. Or if I'm just playing guitar, my guitar playing is better. You know what I mean? Than if I was doing both at the same time.
Okay, so you finish high school, or
yep.
that era anyway, and what moves do you make
Well, actually,
at that
let's
point?
rephrase that. I didn't finish high school. I quit.
Okay, you finish with high school. You've had
Yes.
enough. What moves do you make at that point?
Well, I basically, I started, like I said, playing in clubs and doing different things like that, and was making very good money. You got to understand, I'm talking probably in the time frame of, probably around the time that Van Halen's first record came out, second record came out. Like, that's when I was playing the clubs. So I was learning all that stuff then. So what was that, 77, 76, 77, 78?
Yeah, around there.
Yeah, and at that point I was like 18 years old, 19 years old, making like, pretty decent money. Back then, you could go play 5 nights a week and make yourself $400, $500, $600, $700 a week, cash, just going and playing music. So I was doing that. I got married very young. I was probably about 20 years old, and I married one of my old guitar player's sister, and she already had a daughter. So at 20, I was playing the club scene, married with a kid. You know what I mean?
Wow. And did you find that when you're in that kind of situation, it's either failure is not an option, or you always have a bit of a backup plan because you have responsibilities? Where were you at?
Failure is not an option. And it's weird. There's a movie out, and I can't remember the name of it. I just saw it recently, and the actor Martin Sheen did with his son, Emilio Estevez. And it's a movie, I guess. Emilio Estevez is a kid. He's like just getting out of school, and his father's a very successful doctor, and he decides before he goes out looking for employment, he wants to walk, like, I think it was in South America somewhere, or maybe, I don't know, somewhere in South America or Europe or whatever, and he wants to walk this mountain range, like, with a backpack, and it's like this famous trail, and he decides that he wants to do it. And it's funny, they have this moment in the car where Martin Sheen says to Emilio Estevez, he's like, why don't you want to do this? Or whether, you can't just keep living your life the way you're living it. You got to have a backup plan. And there's a genius line in the movie, and Emilio Estevez turns, to his dad, who's playing his dad.
Yeah.
And he just says, I don't want a backup plan. And the father's like, why? And he goes, if I have a plan B, I'll use it. And if you think about it, it's kind of, I think people that don't have, a lot of people that don't have a plan B are usually successful because they don't know anything other than what they're doing. They're like I was saying earlier, there is no option. There was no option for me because I quit school under the premise that I wanted to be a rock star, and I wanted to be a musician, and I wanted to be like Steven Tyler and David Bowie and Robert Plant and all these great guys that I had on my wall, the Beatles. And to be honest with you, I never had a plan. I never had a backup plan. And if I had one, I probably would have used it, which means that I probably would have not put as much or devoted as much of myself into the plan A, you know what I mean? Whatever. So I never had a plan. It was nothing other than playing music to some degree and being successful at it.
At that point, what was your plan there for success?
Well, I was in Philadelphia, and I had a couple friends, actually, Johnny D, who wound up being the drummer for Britney Fox and Doro, and he had gone out to California with a couple friends, and he came back, and this was probably early 80s, and he was freaking out. He's like, dude, we all had a band together in Philadelphia. We were dabbling with writing music and trying to write originals, and he'd gone out to California for just a vacation, and he came back and he's like, it's crazy out there. He's like, there's all these bands. He goes, man, I saw this band it was right as Rat got signed, but he was out on the Strip and he saw Rat do like one of their last shows before they went on tour at the Gazzari's or one of those places, and he was talking about Rat and how everybody was walking around with like palm tree hair and the girls were half naked, and he's like, there's every club out there is open for rock and roll originals, and which is what was lacking in Philadelphia. We could play covers, but there wasn't a big market for like the kind of music that I was trying to write, or for that matter, Cinderella, any of the bands. There was only maybe 2 clubs in the whole county that you could play original music in. And so the band that I was in, us and the very, very beginning stages of Cinderella, we would play like the same 2 clubs. It was like the Galaxy and the Empire Rock Room in Philly. So Johnny D's the one that said, man, we got to go to California, man. It's wide open. And at that point, like the band that I was in, Johnny wound up not going. But the other 3 guys in the band, we actually moved out one at a time over the course of about 8 months or a year. And we moved to California. And we said, all right, we're going to do it. Let's do this. And Johnny wound up not coming, and so we had a 4th guy from Philadelphia come out later and wound up playing drums for us. So, and that was it, man. I just thought that we were just going to come out and just take California by storm.
And did you?
Yeah, kind of, to a degree. I mean, we weren't at Guns N' Roses or Poison, crowds, but we were getting there. We were very close. And it was pretty cool, but unfortunately that band, it was called Angora. We did a couple of tracks and it wound up getting onto a couple different records or whatever, but it was very difficult because a couple of the members eventually started getting into drugs and partying, and the whole thing just kind of imploded.
It's a band I've heard a lot about, but I haven't heard anything of. Did those songs ever get released anywhere?
A couple of them on a KNAC compilation record, and then somebody just put out I guess it was called Kings of the Sunset Strip or something like that. And there's a couple of Angora songs on that record, I think that's the name of the album, but there's a couple of compilation records out there that have some Angora stuff on it. And and at some point, once I do go back out with my band, I think I'm going to pull a couple of those out and blow the dust off them and just do them again. I think it'd be fun.
Oh, that'd be cool. So Angora implodes.
Yes.
You're in LA with your wife and stepchild.
Mm-hmm.
What moves do you make then?
Well, I met this manager a guy named John Greenberg, and he saw me play before, and it was weird for him. He was like, he thought I was really good, but the band wasn't ready yet. And so he basically had, 3 of the members of a band called Racer X. He had those guys, and they were singerless. So he put me together with them. We got together and we did some writing. Shortly after we did some demos and some writing, Scott Travis, the drummer of the band, wound up getting the Judas Priest gig. So he went off to Judas Priest, and then we got another drummer named Walt Woodward, and we basically formed The Scream.
Now that album came out, and it never really broke through, I don't think, into mainstream, but it definitely got a lot of attention.
Yeah, it was weird. We were getting a lot of radio airplay, and I think, had we gone out and done maybe, a couple more runs or a couple more legs of the tour that we were doing, if we would have done that, I think it would have eventually blown up. I mean, we were doing some pretty big gigs. I mean, still to this day, one of the biggest crowds that I've ever played for in a live situation was The Scream. We did a huge festival down in Florida, and I think we played to like 60,000, 63,000, something like that. So that was even bigger than that one, and yeah, in all honesty, that was probably the biggest crowd that I've ever played to, barring the Swedish Rock Festival that I played with Union. So it was, even bigger than any of the shows I did with Motley. So, it was pretty cool, man. We were definitely starting to break and open some eyes, you know what I mean? And then, fortunately / unfortunately, I got the Motley gig.
And the Scream were interesting because you got Racer X, which is kind of this shred metal band.
Mm-hmm.
Some members of that, and I definitely wouldn't classify the Scream as shred metal. What caused the reinvention of those guys in terms of the material?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, like when I put it together, I didn't put it together. I just told them, I'm like, look, this is where I'm at. You know what I mean? And I'm just not that guy. I don't want to say that I don't like, guys like Yngwie or, that shred metal stuff. I do like it, but it's just not my cup of tea. You know what I mean? It's not vocally, it's not something that I would want to do. I'm more of a, for lack of a better term, I'm a classic rock guy. I love it. Always have, always will. And that's it. So we just sat down and I'd bring riffs in or they'd bring riffs in and, with everything with my voice, it just, I don't know, man, it was weird. Like, but it was cool because there was moments of, like, if you listen to the guitar solo on Outlaw, Bruce Kulick is just ripping that thing a new ass. I mean, the guitar solo on Outlaw is just badass. And then he does another one on, there's another song on that record called Catch Me If You Can. And he's just shredding on that thing. But it was weird because he was very chameleon-like. Like him and the bass player already they could do that crazy stuff in context with the song. Like they could just have these flashes of like, shred masters but do it within the context of the song. Both of those guys are very musical. And I think that was the thing that was cool about it. It had this bluesy, raw kind of vibe to it, but there was some things that Johnny was doing on the bass, or Juan was doing on the bass, and there was some things that Bruce was doing on guitar, but within the context of the song that were just brilliant. It was amazing. So it was cool.
Now, obviously, the Mötley Crüe opportunity comes in, but you're in a band that it sounds like you were still excited by and everything was going great. So even though it was an opportunity you really couldn't pass up, was there any trepidation about leaving the Scream?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, you got to understand, like, the Scream, all of us, that was our first big record deal. That was our first, we all toured together for the first time. We, everything was on a bigger scale and for the first time for all of us. We were doing videos, we were doing all this shit. So, we were breaking bread together, breaking ground together, and opening eyes together, and so it was very difficult for me to leave that situation and go do this other thing with Motley. And even one point, those guys were the ones that said to me, like, dude, you're crazy if you don't do this. This is like, but it was hard walking away from the Scream. That was our baby. That was our thing. And it was very difficult.
Now, when the Motley record came out, I remember it was one of the guitar magazines, Guitar World, I think, had you guys on the cover. And there was a lot of talk within it about the excitement of having you come in as a guitar player, as a writer, as a voice that could not have been any more different than Vince Neil. How did it feel for you to come into that band? Obviously a massive band, but with this willingness to have them adapt somewhat to you, to what you were bringing to the table.
Well, it was weird because one of the earlier conversations I had with Nicky, and I don't mean this in any disrespect, because I told the guys this. I had been in the band for like a year or so, and I finally told them, I go, I do not want to be in this band if you're asking me to come in and just sing Shout at the Devil and Dr. Feelgood and Livewire and, or whatever. Or if you just want me to come in and sing what you write. Like, if I can't contribute to the writing, like, I'm not interested. And,
a year later?
Well, I told him that, but I told him like a year later after I was in the band. I told him that in the very beginning. And then a year later, like...
Oh, reminded them.
Well, I didn't remind them, but it was weird because, like, I really had no clue, to be honest with you. Like, I knew who Motley was. I knew who they were. I knew they were a big band. I get that. But I really didn't know much about them because, again, like, my record collection basically consisted of everything from, like, probably late 60s. I mean, if you think about 66, 67 till about 1980. And then, like, the 80s thing just kind of went over my head. I'd much rather listen to like Sabbath and Grand Funk and Humble Pie and like all these Mountain and all these bands that I love, Free, and not to mention the Zeppelins, the Bowies, the Aerosmiths, all this stuff. That's what I grew up listening to, and even still to this day, if you look at my iPod, I've probably got 10,000 songs on it, and probably 8,500 of them are entire libraries from 70s bands. You know what I mean? So, like, Motley, I didn't really get it. You know what I mean? Like, when we got into the room, I'm like, oh, hey, guys, what's up? Da-da-da-da. And, sang a couple songs for them. They were, like, stoked about it. And then, I just grabbed the guitar with Mick, and we were just noodling around with stuff, and I was showing Mick this riff, and Tommy and Nicky were like, oh, you play guitar? And I'm like, yeah. And we literally just started jamming. Like, I think the first 2 days that we were there, or the first week that we were jamming together, we pretty much wrote most of or all of Hammered and a lot of Misunderstood. It was just jamming, just bashing shit out, and it was awesome. It was killer.
It's amazing how much more fun it is in the jam room than the rest of it, eh?
And it makes it fun too. Like, I didn't go into Motley Crüe thinking that I had to be a member of Motley Crüe, because I didn't really know much about Motley Crüe to base it on. I was just going in as John Corabi, the hippie that loved 70s shit. You know what I mean? And that was it. Like, half of the riffs that, you know, it was just, to me, everything was just like very Zeppelin-y, Queen, like, you know, whatever. Like, we were just doing simple, basic shit that I kind of grew up, like, even a song like Poison Apples. To me, Poison Apples is just more of it's Motley Crüe doing something that sounds, to me, very Cheap Trick-ish.
Was grunge at all an influence at all in the writing?
I mean, you know, I was hearing it, but, you know, I got to be honest with you, like, I still to this day, people are like, oh, dude, have you heard the new, you know, blah, blah, blah. I don't listen to radio, so I don't really pay attention to anything. I'm kind of stuck in my own head, and I like the things that I like. And if I want to listen to something or be inspired by something, I'll go back and I'll listen to Alice Cooper or David Bowie or whatever. I mean, to me, like, probably one of the most eclectic and genius time periods of music was probably right after the Beatles did the Revolver record till, like, you know, AC/DC, Back in Black, and, you know, whatever. Like, that whole time frame of, like, the Ted Nugents and bands like Yes and Jethro Tull and Queen and Kiss, and, you know what I mean? These are all the bands that I paid money to go see and that I had on my walls. And so I still hear things that I didn't hear as a teenager. You know, there's still little guitar riffs in the background, and to me, that's my canvas. Do you know what I mean? So the 80s, and I'm not knocking any, because I'm friends with a lot of the 80s guys, love them to death. But the 80s didn't mean shit to me. It really didn't. I don't mean that to sound callous or whatever, but I wasn't into, or I wasn't listening to, let me put it that way. I wasn't listening to a lot of that stuff that was just blowing people's minds in the 80s. I just wasn't. I was more into the 70s stuff.
Amongst fans of 80s music, and especially of the bands, like following the 80s bands into the 90s, where they all kind of reinvented themselves a little bit at the same time, there's considered a holy trinity. There's 3 records that were underappreciated at the time, but now have got this massive cult appeal. One is the Motley record, one is the Warrant record at the same time, and one is the Winger record at the same time. There's Pull. Right now, the name of the Warrant records escape me, but there's 3 records. They're the holy trinity amongst fans that have been rediscovered a lot later, looking back at it, and they've been much more appreciated than perhaps they were at the time. Do you get that feeling of this cult appeal to that Motley record, that this time later people look back at it and appreciate it more?
You know, it's really funny. Like, I had a manager a few years ago, and he was talking to me, and he was telling me, like, it's really weird, but a lot of the music, probably most of the music that I've done, or if not all of it, has been something that came out, people talked about it for a bit, good or bad, but then for some apparent reason, like later on, it became like this thing, and I'm kind of realizing it now. Like, the Scream record is like this cult classic that people cannot get their hands on. I can't tell you how many emails I get about, please put the Scream record back out again so we can get it. Same with the Motley record. Everybody writes to me and they're like, dude, I'm really sorry I didn't give that record a chance when it came out, but man, I've been listening to it, and God, what a great album. every song on it's just a great record from top to bottom. But it's the same with Union, the band Union. When I had that band, when we were out, we couldn't get arrested. And now I get people all the time are like, please do a Union reunion, please. You know what I mean? And so it's just really funny to me. I'm like, I don't know if it's just poor advertising or marketing, or if I'm just so ahead of everything else. I don't know what it is. I can't figure out what the deal is, or like why it is the way it is. But almost all of the records that I've done are just records that people eventually catch on to and go, wow, where was this? This was great. This is great. So, but especially with the Motley record, there's a lot of fans out there right now that are just like, dude, that record is just amazing. It's amazing.
Now, I think the rest of your time in Motley has been pretty well documented, so I think I'll just jump forward because I am actually much more interested in the Union's side than, okay, didn't work out with Motley. They brought back Vince. You moved on. I'm more interested in, okay, the day happens, you're out of Mötley Crüe. What do you do to regroup at that point?
To be honest with you, I was pretty panicked when that happened. But, I had met Bruce Kulick quite a few times at Nicky's house. And, to be perfectly honest with you, it was Nicky that called both of us and said, Nicky called Bruce and said, I think you and Crab would write well together. And then he called me and he said, look, you and Bruce are into a lot of the same bands like Cream and Hendrix. And like I said, all these bands. And he goes, I think you guys should try and put something together. So Bruce and I got together, and the first day we got together, it was a little bit of therapy for both of us, because we were, if you remember back at that time, we were both going through the exact same thing at the same time.
Yeah.
He had just lost the Kiss gig. I just lost the Motley gig.
It was interesting because from the outsider looking in, it made perfect sense because of the band situations, but
right.
In terms of the players, it was one of those things where I personally thought, how can that possibly work? I don't get that, those two players together, until I heard it.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know what people were thinking. It was even funny, though, to a degree. Like, apparently Eric Singer was telling me from Kiss, he was like, yeah, when you and Bruce put Union together, like, in a joking manner, like Paul and Gene and Eric and everybody were talking about, like, they were making like side bets on how long it would take us to kill each other. Because we are so drastically different. But for some reason it worked. Like, Bruce and I are just, he's very easy to write with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's guitar tones. He's very open to, me suggesting things, as I was very open to him suggesting things. So it just worked. I don't get it. I don't understand, I don't know. It was very easy. But it was also very therapeutic, as I was saying. Like, we were both coming out of huge bands. We were both losing the chicks that we were with, all through those huge bands. So there was a lot of changes in our life that were running in parallel together. And we put a lot of it down on paper, like, lyrically, some of those songs on the first Union record, I tried to be as clever as possible by masking my feelings, or, what I mean, but I used, weird terminologies, in reference to girls or life or past friends and bandmates. And I just put different, had like poetic liberties, but we were kind of talking for each other through those records. You know what I mean? It was weird. It was very weird, but it worked. And it's another band that, like, 1998 when we came out, we had all these magazines and different people going, oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be great. This is going to be great. And we went out and we slugged our ways through the tours. and we went from not a lot of people knowing about the band to, playing really decent sized clubs and festivals and different things like this. But for some reason, it wasn't translating in record sales. We could not get arrested. We couldn't get MTV to back us. We couldn't get any tours because with the newer bands, we were considered 80s guys. And with the 80s bands, we were considered a new band. So we basically just kind of walked our own path and just struggled. And it's weird now, 10 years later, 12 years later, people were like, we want Union. And I'm like, where the frick were you like 15 years ago?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we never split up. We never actually split up. We're all still very good friends. Brent and Bruce both just texted me and congratulated me on getting married in the last couple weeks. And, so we're very good friends, and we've actually even talked about possibly going out and doing some shows. But, we had to do what we had to do to make a living, and Bruce wound up doing the Grand Funk thing. I left and did Rat, and then oddly enough, Brent and Jamie wound up playing drums and bass for Vince Neil.
It seems, having been a staple on the Monsters of Rock cruise, that would be a no-brainer as a spot to bring back Union.
We've talked about it, me and the guys, and then I even talked to, one of the guys that runs the boat is actually a manager of mine. So, I've talked to him about it, and he thought it would be a great idea. But, again, like, it's got to be something that, we get together, we rehearse everything, we're set and ready to go, and and then there's scheduling. Like Bruce is busy constantly with Grand Funk Railroad, and then he's got personal appearances and different things he does at KISS conventions and his solo stuff. And then you got Brent, who's, he's been out for the last 2 or 3 years doing Slash, and then I've been busier than shit. And Jamie, somebody just told me that Jamie's been playing with Roger Daltrey. So everybody's been pretty busy. You know what I mean?
I figured I'd try.
No, I mean, believe me, that last statement, I've already talked to the people from Monsters of Rock about it, and then I said, hey man, how would you guys feel about possible, maybe like a Union reunion, like one show on the boat, that's it, maybe a couple of them, like just that thing. And they were like, oh yeah man, that'd be great, but it's just getting all 4 of us together at the same time and doing it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
And it would have to be all 4 to really pull it off.
Yeah, I'm not real big. Like, I've had some people go, hey, man, why don't you put the Scream back together again? And it's like, unfortunately, our drummer, Walt, passed away about 7 years ago. We just don't have any desire to do it without the 4 original guys. And if I'm going to do Union, it's got to be the 4 original guys, period. So, we got to figure it out. But it's not just about showing up on the boat and playing it. Like, we would have to get together, rehearse a little bit, rehearse for like a week, blow the dust off of everything. Everybody get their sea legs together again and go out and play like a really badass hour and a half set.
So for that first Union record, which, like you said, it was a bit of a struggle for you, you immediately put out a live record. What was the logic behind that?
To be honest with you, we were actually, we were doing pretty well at that point. We were drawing pretty decent crowds, and the record label that we were with for the first record had gone under, and we didn't really want to lose any momentum. Like, we were starting to build an audience. The first record label went under, and at that point, we had no record label. So we were doing some shows with Cinderella, and they were doing a live record. And we showed up to the gigs to do our thing, and the president of the record label, Cinderella and Union had the same managers, and they're like, well, what about those guys? You know, maybe we got the truck is here. We have the truck here. Why don't we do a Cinderella live record, and while we're here, we'll record something by Union as well. And we were like, okay, you know, we thought about it. We're like, you know, bands usually do you know, live records like 7 records in. But at that point, we were like, okay, we're doing some Kiss stuff. You know, we're doing, you know, we have our material, and we're doing some of the Motley, some Scream, some Kiss, like. There was a lot more stuff there than what was on our first record that we wanted to bring to everybody's attention. And we figured in the meantime, until we got another record deal, we could at least put that one out and to kind of hold everybody over until we did another record. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we wound up, as it turned out, we wound up getting a deal with Spitfire, and then we did the Blue Room.
And they also re-released their first record, right?
Yeah, Spitfire bought the rights to the first record and then put them both out on their label.
Now, when the Blue Room came out, that was right at Napster, wasn't it? It was file sharing had really kind of kicked in. I think that one really, you kind of got kicked in the nuts with that, didn't you?
Yeah, it was very weird. Like we basically had, I think our first record, I'm not really sure the total, but somebody told me that we sold about 40,000 records on the first album. Now that's not going to be the SoundScan number. That's like counting European territories, you know, records that we were selling. We sold, you know, maybe about 50,000 records because we were selling them at shows and all this other kind of shit. And, you know, so then when we did the Blue Room, we had the first record, we sold about 40 or 50,000 records, and we had no real, like, radio support, nothing on that record. We just kind of came out, started playing, and did our thing. Second record comes out, we have a bigger budget, we had radio support, you know, tons of interviews, a promotional tour, like all this shit. We wound up having a single on the radio for a song called Do Your Own Thing. And it was really funny. We had about 110 radio stations playing Do Your Own Thing. We're getting all kind of buzz. First week of SoundScan, the record comes out, first week of SoundScan, and we do like, it was like just under 10,000 records. It was like 9,800 copies of the record and change. And the record company was like, oh man, this is great. First week, you know, you guys did like 10,000 records. It's going to be awesome. And in literally the second week, I mean, normally there's like a kind of a gradual drop off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we went from selling like 10,000 records to like second week we got the SoundScan, and everybody was like literally scratching their heads going, what the fuck has just happened here? Like we went from 10,000 records to like 86 records the second week. And we're like, how the hell, you know, how did that happen? Here, I'll tell you exactly what happened is our record came out like, it was like February or March. We had turned the record in, and then the record label probably in November prior to this, about 4 months ahead of time, started sending out copies to radio stations and to magazines and to podcasts and to anybody that would listen that had anything to do with promoting a band. So they start sending these records out. And so now 4 months later, the record comes out. We do 10,000 the first week. Like 86 records the second week. We're like, okay, so we go out on tour. We're actually drawing on the second thing on Blue Room. We were literally selling out places of, 1,000 plus clubs.
Wow.
I mean, we were doing great business. And suddenly these people start coming up to us with these burnt discs of the record. And we're like, oh, hey, man, they're like, hey, can you sign this? And we'd be like, yeah, where'd you get that? Where did you get that record, that copy? Did you buy the record or something? They're like, no, I got it off of Napster. Well, I'm like, what the fuck is Napster? Oh, dude, it's this website. You can get all this information, or you can get all these records, and and we went on, and basically there was. I told the record label about it, and basically they researched it, and they found out like that you could literally go. There was Napster. The entire record was on there from November. The entire record was on Napster like 3 months before our record even came out.
Pretty bold move coming to get a burnt CD signed.
Well, dude, you wouldn't believe it. I still get people that come over to me like, oh, hey, dude, okay, can you, whatever. And they'll bring me like a burnt copy of the Scream album, or, a burnt like bootleg DVDs. And I'm just like, at this point, I'm just like, I don't give a, pardon my French, I don't give a fuck. Okay, here, boom, see ya. Talk to you later. But it's just funny. Like the Union record literally came out 3 or 4 months before the record did. We were and it was weird. There was a thing on there where somehow my record label found out that they could tell when the first file sharing was, so they could kind of go back and go, okay, we sent those advances out to radio stations. They'd sent out like 3 or 4 copies to each radio station, and somebody probably listened to it or didn't listen to it and said, fuck this, and threw it in some bin or whatever, and somebody took it and shared it on file, 3 or 4 months before. But they could also tell, we had something like, it was crazy. It was some astronomical amount of downloads. Like they could tell how many things have been, like how many songs have been downloaded, or the entire record in its entire whatever. And they were just like, it was just unbelievable. Napster absolutely crushed Union, crushed us. And at that point we went, we can't get a break. So that's, we did that tour for the Blue Room, and then everybody started looking for other things to do to make money. You know what I mean?
But if you're drawing 1,000 people at a show, it seemed like you could still make a go at it just from the touring alone.
Well, it's weird though. You gotta, like, you don't really make a lot of money touring. Like, you gotta understand, like, we were out in the bus. We had a Crue guy. We had our tour manager with us. I don't remember if we had a sound guy or not. I don't think we did. But you're paying a bus driver. You're paying for the bus. You're paying for the fuel. You're paying for the oil changes. You're paying for the tour manager. You're paying for the tech. You're paying for hotel rooms on the days off. Everybody's drawing a little bit of a salary. It's just weird. There's not a lot. Even still, when I do it, it's better even doing these acoustic shows that I'm doing. It's cool, but at the end of the day, like, gas, tolls, food, like all this, it's like you make decent amount of money, but like more, probably close to half of the money is used for traveling. And then there's agents' commissions and managers' commissions and all this other stuff. And, you make a good living. I make a great living. I'm not complaining, but there's a lot, in that situation with Union, it was crazy, man. We were like, we weren't making a shit ton of money. You know what I mean? We were out there, we were like taken money out of this fund and to put it into this fund so that we could buy bigger backdrops or buy this or buy that. So we were just kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul the whole time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's not really sustainable at all.
Yeah, and then, I mean, we were doing great business in Europe, but, like, we always had to have some sort of a fund together. We were offered festivals and things in Europe, and they just pay you a flat fee. They're like, okay, you come over here and you do this festival for $15,000, $20,000, but, you got to get yourself there.
Yeah, that'll get me over, then I'll tour while I'm there, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, but you have to have startup funds, so you're flying over 4 or 5 guys, and it's pretty crazy, man. It isn't like it used to be 20 and 30 years ago. You know what I mean? It's bands have to have all your bands have had to figure out how to be thrifty and how to stretch a dollar, man. It's just way of life.
So when that band quietly kind of packs it in,
mm-hmm.
Was it the next move to join Rat? And was the Rat a response to Union, where it's just, well, this is a nice safe gig that I can make a living at?
It was kind of a thing where, from a mental point of view, it was a no-brainer. I could just go play guitar, which is what I love to do, play some guitar, sing, travel the world, and let somebody else worry about all the things that I had just got done worrying about with Union and Motley and The Scream.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a no-brainer. I mean, not to sound callous or put a dollar thing on it, but it was a great way for me to get out, have fun, travel, play music, and stand there with my hand out on Friday, just like anybody else that goes to the office and works. I got paid on Friday, and I didn't have to worry about all the shit like T-shirts, ticket sales, record sales, like how are we going to pay for the bus? I don't know. I just need my check. You know what I mean? And that was it. It was kind of a no-brainer. And I had fun, man. I'm still friends with all those guys. It was very cool. But after a while, I'm like, I really want to get back out and start singing and be my own guy again. You know what I mean? Was it simply, a little bit jaded, need to lick your wounds a little bit and then recharge and come back at it again? No, it wasn't really jaded. I was just tired. Oh, okay. I was tired, and it was literally like, I mean, how many jobs do you get paid to go stand on stage in front of thousands of people with a guitar, smoke a cigarette, drink a Guinness, and get paid for that? Yeah, it doesn't sound too terrible at all, does it? Yeah, so it was just, I was tired. I was mentally tired, and I just wanted to go have some fun and not, just have fun and stop worrying about all the business aspects of the business. And Rat was my therapy for that. You know what I mean? And I had a blast with him. We had a great time, a lot of fun, a lot of stories. I made a lot of friends, and it was great. And then I kind of took a few years off, if you will, recharged my batteries, and I went, okay, now John Corabi's ready to stand in the front again and be the guy, which is kind of what I'm doing now. At any point, did you contemplate just walking away and being done with it? Music itself? Yeah. Yeah, no, I can't do that. I still don't have a plan. So there's no option. Perfect. I'm a 50-year-old man with no plan. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is what I do. This is what I was put on earth to do. It took me a while to figure it out. It took me a while to accept certain things the way that they are. And that's it. This is what I do. This is what I was meant to do. And this is what I'm always going to do until I can't do it anymore. You know what I mean? Yeah. The solo acoustic thing is very cool. I know Kip Winger's done that for a couple of years and had a lot of, it's worked out really well for him. What do you like so much about just grabbing your guitar and going out and playing some shows like that? Well, I don't really take myself all that seriously. So, I go out and I do these shows and I tell stories and I laugh and I kid around and, when I first started doing the acoustic shows, I was basically like, oh, I got it. I had my head on wrong. I was basically going, I need to give the audience, 24 songs in an hour and a half, give them their money's worth. And it's not necessarily about that. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's more about interacting with the audience. I like to tell jokes. I kid around with them. It's a show, like people, after I get done I'd do the shows with 24 songs in it, and I'd spend the whole rest of the night sitting at the bar having people ask me, hey, that third song, like Father, Mother, Son, what's that? Like, what made you write that song? And I'd sit there and tell them, and I'm like, you know what, I'm looking at this the wrong way. Maybe I need to just tell them that information while I'm on stage and explain why I wrote that song, or why I wrote this silly little love song called Never Loved Her Anyway, or why I, or just, why I do this one Beatles song in my set, or why I do that one Aerosmith song in my set, or whatever, and just kind of do that on stage, because that's truly what I know. When I met Steven Tyler, and I sat and I had the option, I had the chance to sit down and play Seasons of Wither with him, which is one of my favorite Aerosmith songs. And we did it together, and I went, Steven, like, what is that song about? Like, where did those lyrics come from? And he told me the whole story, and I was fascinated. And I'm like, oh my God, that's, so I kind of thought I went back to when I met Tyler, and when I met Robert Plant, and when I met Glenn Hughes, and I met all the guys that I was growing up, I would ask them certain things about that. And I'm like, these people are here to see me for a reason. Maybe I'm their favorite singer, maybe I'm one of their favorite singers, maybe whatever. They probably have the same questions for me that I had for the guys that so now I just kind of do it in my set, and I have fun with it, and you know what I mean? And I talk about my love songs, and I make a joke, it's like, okay, I'm going to do a couple sappy love songs right now, but I want you to pay close attention to the lyrics, because these songs are written about the women that I'm currently giving all of my money to. And everybody just laughs, and they're like, oh, it's so funny, and whatever. And, so it's just a very loose, goofy little evening, but I love it. I love it being stripped down, and it just really kind of shows the songs in their purest form.
And did the acoustic show lead to the acoustic record, or the acoustic record lead to the acoustic shows?
They were both kind of happening at the same time. I had somebody ask me to do an acoustic record, a label, right at the same time I was asked to go out and tour with Cinderella. And it was weird. They both really kind of, I literally started laying the tracks down for the acoustic record, and I got called to go out and do the Cinderella tour. I went out and I opened for them for the whole summer, and I came back, finished the record, and put it out. So it just worked out that way. You know what I mean?
And what's next?
Well, right now I've got a bunch of ideas for a full-blown electric, balls out record, and my band is rehearsing right now to just for the hell of it and doing it. We're going to go out and we're going to do some shows. It's the 20th anniversary of the Mötley Crüe record that I did. So we're going to go out and do. I don't know if we can do the whole record, because there's a song on the record that the way we recorded it, it's just, we recorded it Pro Tools in pieces. So there's 3 different pieces in 3 different tunings. So it's physically impossible to do that song live. But
which song's that?
Welcome to the Numb. Yeah, there's 3 different tunings in that song. But and when I say tunings, it's like open tuning, then we tune the guitars regular, then we tune the guitars regular with like 2 strings off. Or it's weird. It's just crazy. But So basically what we're going to do is, there was, in my time span with Motley, during that first record, we recorded probably about 23 or 24 songs in total. So there's more than enough material for me to replace that one song with one of the other ones. And then there's a couple of other songs that I wrote for, the Generation Swine record that I could put into that as well. So I'm just saying basically the Motley 94 material, and just leave it like a wide open canvas. So we could do, instead of doing Welcome to the Numb, maybe we'll do like Let Us Pray or 10,000 Miles Away or something like that, one of those bonus tracks that was, wasn't on the initial record. So,
and I'm sure if you play something off Generation Swine, people would love to hear what the original intent was for that song.
Yeah, I think as long as I just say, listen, I'm not going to go out and do the Motley 94 record in its entirety from top to bottom in the order that you heard it on the record. I'm just saying, like, I'm going to go out and play one full set of the 94 material, like stuff that was recorded and written while I was in the band. And, I still think it's going to be cool. You know what I mean? We're going to do the entire record except one song, and then we'll have probably about another 9 or 10 songs that weren't on the record as they were bonus tracks or on box sets and all this other shit. So it'll be cool, but it's so far, we're not doing it yet. We're probably looking at mid-October, and but I'm getting a lot of calls for it. I'm getting a lot of people that are saying, bring it here, bring it here, bring it here. So we'll see what happens.
And that was the story of John Corabi. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes and leave a comment. It'll help spread the word about the show. You can check out other great shows at the Cast Iron Ring. Lots of good stuff always happening over there. We'll see you next week on The Double Stop.
Wave goodbye to a friend of mine. Guess it's time as the sun shines through the dawn. Another night is gone. Seems like days since I saw her face. In her place, no trace of yesterday. Yeah, but that's okay. If she never comes back, it'll be too soon.